guys, how are y'all today? Y'all want a shop tour? All right, let's do it. So here's my plywood cart. I've got it as tall as it can be without being in the way of my garage door opening and closing. Check it out. I've got tons of storage on the back side, tons of table saw jigs, plenty of storage for all my plywood scraps. I can fit MDF in there. It's 97 inches tall on the inside dimensions on the right side. Having this thing actually gave me like 2 more walls. I've got a little bit of stuff back in the back here. I just lean a ladder there. And back here is my dust collector. I've got another video on the dust collector if you'd like to watch that. I'll leave a link down in the description below. There's my saw blade rack and my mortiser. Here's a lumber rack up above, out of the way. Continue down this wall here to just wrap around. You can see the dust collection kind of go out my garage door rails. And I got one line running down to the jointer and one going to the table saw, router table, and planer. There's my jointer. I really want a bigger jointer. I like the 8-inch wide cut, but it's really not powerful enough for really hard woods, and the infeed and outfeed tables are just not quite long enough. I built these little supports just temporarily, put in place just to give some support, but I plan to either weld on longer extensions or get somebody else to manufacture that for me, versus save my money and get a Powermatic 8-inch parallelogram jointer. If you guys have any info on that Powermatic jointer versus a Laguna, let me know in the comments below. So here's my main clamp rack. I built it that way I would have plenty of space to expand later. A lot of people are moving away from pegboard, but I actually like it, and you're fixing to see why I do. Number one, this was free, along with all the pegboard hangers. All of them were free. They were my grandmother's, and well, I say they're free. I purchased the place after she passed. But that being said, check out this organization. Everything is always a work in progress, but I've got everything at arm's reach that I need or that I would use right here at my small assembly table. Going around, you see my Profusion heat garage heater up here. I haven't had it very long and it's already having some issues. It makes a rattling noise, I assume from the fan. So I've already sent an email and we'll try to get that replaced. So here's my scrap wood storage cart, dowels and all my cutoffs and such, and here's cutoffs that I'll never use. I throw in just 5-gallon buckets and then I take them to the fire pit to burn. This I rarely used, but it was a gift from my papa / a trade. So it stays right there, and it's kind of handy. It's at a nice height so I can stand and work with it, or use a stool and sit in front. So this is a drawer that I just use for everything. Stuff that I don't ever use, just goes right in there. Plans, you name it. I can't stand to throw away this plywood here. I find little things to do with it, such as little hangers, for instance. Simple little hanger for the miter gauge. I've got a bunch of cutoffs for plywood in here, and then different types of lumber back in there. Like I said, everything's a work in progress. I've got a built-in shop vac. It's hidden back there in the back. I've got a dust stopper on this 5-gallon bucket. It works pretty well. Not quite as good as the Dust Deputy that I have on another shop vac, but it does the job. I got a small little chainsaw right there. This thing was not functioning when it was given to me by my best friend, and I fixed it up real good. It's got a leak in it, but I just burn all the fuel out of it and just let it sit. It's handy for when you're climbing trees. All my walnut cutoffs are going to be in here. I don't throw away anything with walnut. I mean, you can tell. I mean, what am I going to do with this? It's an old knife handle that I made. This drawer here is all my sharpening jigs and setup blocks for my slow speed grinder. So I've got all the Wolverine attachments. While I'm in this spot, I'll go ahead and show you my fridge. It's got all the necessary ingredients that you need in a day's work: water and walnut oil. So here's a little setup that I came up with when I was rearranging my shop recently. I don't always use this, so I built this little removable device here. Actually, it's my first Morrison tenon that I hand cut. You can tell it's definitely not perfect, but it's got a wedge in it and it holds in place, and it does the trick for what I need right here. Magazines in here, hardware, miscellaneous stuff up here that I may use. Here's some leftover 100-year-old white oak that I built my spectator chairs with. If you'd like to see those videos, which are not the best quality and unedited, I'll leave a link to the playlist down below. Here's another table saw jig. This thing is heavy as can be, but it's it's my tenoning jig. I've got the Vac Setup here. This miter saw is a rigid 12-inch double bevel sliding compound miter saw. It is a newer version of the one that I had. The one I had, it would not cut square unless you were making straight cuts down. If you use the slide, it would not cut square. It had a bow in it, and I found out that there was a recall. So $21 later, plus some gas money going to service centers and to Home Depot 2 or 3 times, I got this brand new saw here. So the first saw was a gift to me from my grandmother for building ramps into her house when she couldn't do stairs anymore. And it did the job well, but for fine woodworking, it wasn't good enough. But I've also found with time, this is where I do all my rough cuts, just a rough length. Anyway, if I want to do precise work, I go to the table saw. But this right here is just basic doors I had. And I just built some little slides that just slide in. It keeps the dust out. What the shop vac doesn't catch, I find that it just comes back here instead of going out and then the air that I'm breathing so much. And that being said, this has not been cleaned in about a year. I actually just used the air hose and just today and just blew everything back that way to make it more presentable. I really want to put some handles on those doors, but this one works basically the same way. I'm eventually going to probably take out all this shelving, majority of it anyway. It actually used to come all the way out to here, about this area, and I removed it a section at a time. It had two of these square sections, and I took out a section at a time. And then when I got the lathe, I took out this part and just used the leftover 2x4s to make an angled brace. I wanted the storage up there. This is handy for small things to work on, minus the gap here. But if it's nice and tall, it's like almost chest level. So it's handy to have up high when I'm working on something small. I've got another grinder that I do the rough work with there. It was my dad's. While we're at the miter station, I might as well show you that this, here's another outfeed or a support. I made this one that click. It's really not that supported, but it does the job for what I need. The other one is of course supported by that Morrison tenon set up there. Let's work our way on around. Here's some apple wood cut-offs. I cannot throw that away. A bunch of different blanks in here, some cherry, pine for practice, and cedar. There's a couple bowl blanks that I turned. I got a really old maple tree that fell, or my cousin and I cut down actually most of it. There's an apple wood tree that my friend had cut down. All my pin turning stuff is in here. A bunch of different blanks. I paid $1 each for these. Walnut blanks for pins. Here are some turning tools that I purchased for her to make it easier. She's never woodworked in her life until just recently. And there's a little set that I bought. I only got into turning just recently, about a half year ago. Gotta have my tunes up here, and then a bunch of different stuff, keyless chuck and such for the lathe, sandpaper, and here's my first bowl that I ever made. It'll stay here, and I was just learning, and I did not have a way to sharpen the tools, so it got dull on me, but I just went ahead and finished it. Now I do all my touch-ups with this CBN, or the CBN wheels on the slow speed grinder with the Wolverine jig. Alright, there's the lathe, the helmets, and here's a little clamp from Harbor Freight that I modified to cut my pin blanks with, to drill the holes, clamp it, and use this drill press table. I made this drill press table many years ago, and I used to have curtain rod as the T-track. It worked for probably 2 years or more into the trick, but I recently upgraded my router table, which you'll see shortly, and I replaced the T-track with this Rockler Universal T-track. Just got a basic stop block here. Does the trick for me. I've got a replaceable insert, and I like it round, that way, you know, I've got way more spaces to use versus turning it, you know, 90 degrees and then just having one spot. Plus I can flip it too, and I can move this table out to use all the areas if I need to. It's just easily removed. Here's my dust collection set up for the drill press. It's just a basic 3 2x4s I glued together and drilled out some holes so that my everything would fit in. It's just friction fit. For instance, if I want to use this for my, I just fit that in there, and I can get all the, like 99% of the chips with Forstner bits. That's just the prototype. Down below on this little setup, I've got drill bits that I use all the time. I tell you, these snappy bits here are just does wonders for your woodworking. So is the fish bits are great too. No tear out, clean holes. Down here I got sanding drums, all my mortiser drill bits, sharpening stones for drill bits and such, Forstner bits. I recently wore out this 1-inch Forstner bit drilling holes. Had a few nails with it. If y'all got any ideas on what brand I should get, Freud or Fish, let me know. Here is a quick setup I did. Before, I had this set up where I could pull this out and set it somewhere convenient. Now I have to take it to the workbench or stay squatted over here to get what I want. And I've got like screws I use frequently, nails, brad nails, finish nails, pin nails, different type of things that I use on a regular basis. There's my chair. Everybody needs a chair to sit on. And toilet paper, you gotta have that in the shop. My charging station is basically just screws put in the face plate here, and just snapped in place. Does the trick for me for now anyway. And here's my adjustable drill storage rack. I've got a separate video on this build. If you guys are interested, I'll leave the link down below to it as well. Let's wrap ourselves on around. There's an extra magnetic cover. Eventually, when I get the big bandsaw, which I'm thinking a Laguna 14BX versus 18BX, or a Paramatic 1500. I think that's what it's called. I'm not really sure. I need a bigger bandsaw. I'll show you here in a minute the bandsaw I've been using for many years. It does okay for a small bandsaw. Here's my mechanic toolbox. First box I bought years ago. Most of my mechanic tools and that kind of things is actually down in my basement shop. That's where all my car stuff is at. I used to actually work on and restore cars and motorcycles before I got into woodworking full time. Now I haven't turned back with this. I've got a little sander here. I want to upgrade that. I'm thinking about the rigid sander, but the issue with the rigid I've found is it's really high speed. I would really like to have an edge sander, but I don't have the space for it. So here's my shop vac I was telling you about with the Dust Deputy. It does great, unless you're doing big cuts from a large Forstner bit. I find that things will get hung in here. This is not big enough. When I had my drill press set up over here, along with my bandsaw, because I used them both together, I was able to use the drill press table as the outfeed for the bandsaw. It was pretty handy. I actually used the dust collector for the chip collection, and it really did better. But I'm pretty happy with this setup because it got all my smaller tools to one side of the shop. Here's the small Craftsman 10-inch bandsaw. I bought it when Sears was going out of business. I think I paid about $100 including tax for this thing. The fence is horrible. I've got a bunch of different blades. PowerTech is what I went with. I was able to get a lot of varieties from Home Depot actually for a good price. I keep a square over here that I made just to keep everything squared up. All my Craig accessories are in here. Drawers and such. Then down here I've got a Dremel tool. Pocket hole plugs. Pocket hole screws. Different jigs and such or making jigs, just random things. See, I really want to make for both of these, I really want to make a drawer that slides out that holds these on. Biscuits and stuff. I don't even have a biscuit joiner, but I've got biscuits. I actually use the router table for that. Still got my weed eaters hang up over here. I'm wanting to build a extension off of the edge of this, a couple different spots, and then build a wall out this way so far, so I have plenty of space to like hang stuff there, and it wouldn't be in the way of the garage door raising and closing. I really don't need a whole lot of space right here around the garage door, except for bringing my mower in, and so I need about at least 65 inches width, so I could do that. Here's my makeshift track saw or edge guide. It's not really a track, it's an edge. But I find that breaking down sheet goods with the table saw is just as easy. But I do have foam over here to break down. I actually have a bunch of this foam because I've been insulating the ceiling. I don't think this is code, but I want to be able to keep all the rafters for storage. I've got tons of things up there. So what I came up with is furring strips, and then I just cut these panels to width and of course length and put them in place. So now I have plenty of storage. I just have to remove panels. For instance, here I've got 2 panels to remove, and then I've got storage on both sides. This used to be my planer cart, but I turned it into my sanding cart because it stuck out way too far. It was right here, and I didn't have a whole lot of space. it came out to about right there. Didn't have a lot of space walking through or managing boards, and it was always in the way of the miter saw. I had to lift up and over to be able to make cuts, and then if I wanted to cut something extra wide and then flip it to cut it, I couldn't do it because the planer was in the way. I've got scrap wood in there, pieces that I probably won't ever use. I've got one Festool item in my shop, and that's a sander, the ETS 125. I love it. My kids love it also. It's minimal vibration, great dust collection. I hope to in the future upgrade to some more Festool items, but for now, I'm mostly stuck with Ryobi or Ryobi, whatever you want to call it. I think it's actually pronounced Ryobi, but so here's my my Showbird Workbench. I actually drove to Chattanooga to buy this one Saturday. Somebody was getting out of the hobby and had this workbench that he hadn't used in years, so I went and purchased it. I raised it up about 1 3/4 inches. I've got leg levelers underneath it. Well, pads actually, and I just use washers to level it off because my shop is not even close to level. I've got drawer slides, all my tools, and I've got this Z-Rust padding. So far it keeps everything, all the rust gone. I've got different items in each drawer, of course. Duh. My most used drawer is probably actually here, and I use a lot of this stuff in and around the table saw, which is the main reason I haven't moved this workbench. I think in many ways it would be more handy to have it the same level as the table saw and the outfeed. But that being said, I can do sheet goods much easier this way, except for whenever I hit this. So the first cut I got to be careful, but I do have a stand over in the corner. You see it right there, that I can put in this area. So I rip a 4x8 piece of plywood through there, and then my offcut will lay right there. And then I can make another cut on another one without having to move everything. So I can do 2 cuts and then move what I need to, and then start over. Instead of having to make a cut, turn off the saw, blah, blah, blah. I've considered moving this workbench over here, but I would have to raise the jointer up, and I like having the jointer a little bit lower for leverage. It would be nice to have that workbench on the side over here, but if I did that, I would either have to raise up the jointer, even if I lowered that workbench, because this is 34 inches and this is like 34 1/4. Or I could move this here, but it would mess up my whole routine. See, right now my router table is set up here. I do inline routing this way or this way for small things. Router bits. If I put the jointer here, I would have to rip this way, and then I would have to set the material there. And then I would have to pull out the planer and plane this way. And then when I'm done, set them here or there, wherever. Right now I'm doing more of a circle versus an S shape. I actually can sit down and use the planer, so I can actually take a load off. I kind of miss it being up higher, but this keeps it out of the way. Here's all my setup for the dust collection. There's a bunch of junk, just ignore that. But I'm a big fan of zip ties. Zip tie everything. Makes it easily removable. So, as you see, I have the Sawstop PCS 175. For a long time, I was regretting I bought this versus the 3 horsepower. And I still kind of do, but I've been able to cut everything that I need without any issues. I actually cut, well, let me show you. This is a 100-year-old white oak right here. It was double this thickness, and I resawed this. And I did it in like 3 passes, maybe 4 passes. I mean, I just had it up like 1.5 inches, 2 inches at a time, just so I wouldn't make burns, and it did the job for me. So here's my router fence here. I've got the Jessam stock guides. I've got the Jessam stock guides for the table saw also. All I have to do is
put them there, use my mag switches.
And it does the job. What I've got is the Incra Master Lift 2 with the magnetic inserts, and I love this thing. I had a router table before that my uncle gave me. It did me wonders for years. It was my first one, and never had an issue with it. But this thing, it's great. The only thing I wish I changed about it was I wished I changed the orientation of the lift itself. I couldn't do it with this lift because of this. Now, I could have taken this off, moved it over, and had plenty of space. And I should have done that. But eventually, I plan to upgrade to a 52-inch rip anyway, and I'll redo it then. I built a cheap and easy scrap plywood dust box, and it gets, I'm talking probably 99% of the dust. So I absolutely love it. I've got a Jessam PowerTech 3 horsepower router in there with a switch, and the RPM is adjustable. I love that feature as well. While we're here at this section, I'll show you this area. This is all my setup blocks for the table saw, minus my Craig setup block here. My Dado blade. I actually use a Dado blade that's not recommended by Sawstop because it's really cheap and I didn't have the money at the time. It's got the shoulders, but with Dados you're not cutting all the way through. It actually cuts flat bottoms as long as you use these magnetic shims from Forest. I haven't had any problems. It does great. Beats paying $200 for another set. Dado break. Now, this I've used just a few times, and let me tell you, I'm glad that I did not get an expensive miter gauge, and I only got the Craig that I've had for many years, because this makes setting up this miter gauge or my Craig much easier, and it's perfect. Every time I've tried it, with every degree that I've tried, it has been on the dot, perfect. So I highly recommend these. Just go ahead and get both of them, at least the degree one. If you plan to do a lot of segmental turnings, do this. It's only missing the number 19, but I think you can live with that. Check it out. I'm not sponsored by anybody, and I don't plan to be, but I highly recommend Miter Set. It's a good tool. Here's a setup for the router to get different depths. I just set all these different setup blocks in there to find the right dimensions I need. I've never even tried this right here, my white side rabbiting bit set. I've got this Keller Dovetail Jig I've never even used yet. I've wanted to. I wanted to get into more dovetail drawer boxes, but I've been stuck on this half system, or what some people call quarter. I love it. It makes glue ups easy. But I found that in an estate sale, or a pre-estate sale, along with the Keller Dovetail System Model 1500. All right. So here's all my inserts and such for my Crosscut Sled and the throat plate. So I've got a separate video on this, but if you notice, I've got a slight angle there. I think it's a 14 degree. Maybe it's 7. I can't remember for sure. But anyway, I cut a dovetail slot in Dado throat plate. And then I made a bunch of these inserts that I just slide in place. I had I think it was, and I hate it. The reason I hated it is because this was not flush. It was proud. See, mine is flush, perfect. The was proud by, I mean, at least the laminate on it. Probably a 64th difference. So anytime you were pushing the stock through, you would catch it, especially with downward pressure or using jigs. It would catch, and then you had to lift and then push on through. Here's my Crosscut Sled. I've got replaceable inserts here. I've got a fence. I actually recently lowered it. I'm not very happy about after lowering it now because I can't raise my blade as high as I did. But I couldn't find a good stock block that I was happy with. And if I could do over, I probably would have got the Cat's Moses version. But this is from Rockler here. And it's much better than my DIY one. The DIY one was just flimsy. This one right here is stable. It doesn't move at all. But I just slide it right back here out of the way. I've got a shooting board right here, and under that is a little jig for the planer that I made years ago for a different planer, actually, for a rigid. I used that thing for probably 8 years and sold it for a decent amount of money, actually. But I just use hot glue and wedges to joint or face plane one side and then flip it over. So this workbench did not come with these, so I just made some walnut ones with some scrap I had laying around. The table saw was too short for me. 34 inches was too short for leaning over, making cuts and such. I may actually lower it back down because my daughter is not as tall as me yet and she uses the table saw. But I've got it up to 38 inches, I believe. And I'm barely 6 feet tall. So it works good for me. I've got another magnetic cover here. I highly recommend those to prevent rust. Basic outfeed table with folding legs, so it folds in and I can move the table saw around. It does have casters, but I found that this plywood bows up with all the weight on it, especially within a few minutes.
After you lower these, if I can do that. I recently moved everything.
Now, most things I build is modular, so this right here is removable. I built this base before I had the table saw. Lucky enough, I had some friends at Woodcraft that told me the dimensions to clarify what some guys on Facebook told me it was, and I could cut that section out so the table saw would sit right down in there. But everything is mostly on remotes. So for instance, if I want to turn off the charging station, I hit off on the 4. On 3, that's the lathe section. 2 is this section here, and 1 is my main section here, all this. And then I have the fluorescent right there in the middle. That was here before I owned the property. I really need to get those plastic protectors to put over top of the fluorescent bulbs. But I think what I might do is upgrade to LED before I do that. It's nice actually having different sections so I don't have to have all lights on at once if I don't want to. And I may actually add a couple more eventually. I've got the Wind Air Purifier. It does pretty good. I add another filter on the front of it also just to get the worst of the dust first, because it fills up within a day and you gotta clean it. And I actually find that having it up higher works better than having it lower. I've tried it down low, like underneath here, near the lathe I had it, and it doesn't work good. It works better up high. Show you my shop vac setup over here. I don't have to move this cart around anywhere. I'll eventually put this, add another blast gate here so I don't have to move this hose around. But I want to use this. It's easy enough. If I want to use the bandsaw, I just plug it in here. And if I want to use the other system, I plug it there. And I've got a blast gate here for this tool, a blast gate there for the overarm, and a blast gate here that takes it all, that goes all the way to the lathe for sanding. And I'll show you the overarm real quick. I've got a Rockler flex port hose. I've got a basic hook here that I use, but this comes around friction keeps it up there. And it comes all the way to right here. So when you want to use a sander or whatever at the sanding station, I can. If I want to get better dust collection at the table saw, guess what I can do? I can bring it over here, use a magnet and hold that in place, and I can get better over tabletop dust collection, because this is not the best setup here with the dust collector. I get plenty for the router table, but for table saw, especially with edge cuts, that does not do the trick. Shop vac works better. Putting this up is as easy as just pushing it right over top of that, bringing it over, clip it in place, and there it is, out of the way. I'll try to go to each corner and give a panoramic view for you guys. While I'm doing this panoramic view from each corner to show you guys the shop, feel free to pause and zoom in, and if you have any questions at all, please let me know, because I'm not going to go through every detail of each item in this video. If you guys see a better setup that I could do, let me know. I do know that with my miter saw, that is the best place for it, because it will stick out 40 inches from the wall, and I can't have 40 inches sticking out from over there. I would lose all this space right here, because when I'm building a table or cabinets, I need this. I need this area. Guys, I want to thank you for watching this video. Please share, comment down below with any questions or any ideas to make my setup better. I hope each and every one of you have a blessed day, a blessed week, and a blessed life. Remember to be kind to others, respect others' opinions and their beliefs. And that being said, as I always say in each and every one of my videos, God bless, take care, and I'll see you soon. So here's my plywood cart, and I've got it fixed so I can raise and lower the garage door without any issues. That worked out real good. That's not supposed to be there. I've got a bunch of different blades. PowerTac is PowerTech. With dados, you're not cutting all the way through, so I figured it's not as likely that I would actually Ooh, what is this? We got a cricket in here.